Reborn back in 1982. I walked straight past the basket holding the abandoned baby. In my previous life, just because I had picked up that child, everyone in the village had cursed me, calling me an unmarried mother, a shameless woman. When I was at my most desperate, Ethan Walker came to propose, saying he didn't care about my past. After we married, he sweet-talked me into giving up my slot to return to the city for Chloe Walker, then ruthlessly killed our biological child and disappeared without a trace. I raised the abandoned child alone and served my mother-in-law until she passed away. Years of hard labor led me to a severe illness that left me bedridden. It was only then that Ethan reappeared and revealed the whole truth. That year, to protect Chloe Walker's reputation, he had intentionally let me be the one to find that baby. I had endured decades of suffering, while he and Chloe lived a happy life out there. The adopted child I raised forced me to divorce so he could return to his biological parents. I couldn't accept it. Even in death, I had to drag them all down to hell with me. That family of 3 hated me to the bone. They abandoned me, gravely ill, in a dilapidated cowshed, leaving me to starve and freeze to death in agony. Later, Ethan Walker stood before my grave burning offerings. You refused to divorce, making Chloe live without a proper title, suffering all sorts of grievances. Now that you're dead, the debt is settled. I forgive you. In your next life, don't be the other woman again. The baby in the basket was so cold its face had turned purple, its cries growing weaker. In my past life, that little white wolf I had painstakingly raised wouldn't even give me a sip of water, just coldly watching as I, half paralyzed, crawled on the ground licking dirty water. I clenched my fists, no longer feeling a shred of softness or hesitation, and turned back home. Before long, a frantic knocking sounded from outside, each bang stronger than the last, as if trying to break the door down. Kathy, are you home? It was Ethan Walker. At this moment, he must have been worried sick, wondering if I had picked up that baby or not. It's so cold, I wonder if the child is okay. The love of a parent in this world, truly pathetic. I boiled a kettle of hot water, waiting until it was just warm before slowly going to open the door. He hadn't pulled back from his last knock and nearly fell into the house. Seeing my unusual coldness, he froze for a moment, then tried to suppress his anger, poking his head in to look around. Kathy, what are you doing? You took so long to open the door. Is something wrong? He asked cautiously, afraid I had discovered something. Anyone can play dumb. I rubbed my eyes, pretending to be sleepy. I was sleeping. Ethan's expression changed instantly. He pushed me aside and rushed into the house, flipping up the blanket, but there was nothing underneath. He frantically looked around everywhere, almost stammering, How can there be nothing? It was only then that I realized how clumsy his acting was. It was just a pity that in my previous life I was too blind, too foolish. There's nothing at all, I said, trying to hold back my hatred, my voice as cold as frost. Ethan snapped out of his daze and immediately grabbed my wrist. Didn't you hurry back because you found something? Otherwise, you should be out in the fields right now, working in Chloe's place. Why are you at home sleeping? He had lied to me, telling me he and Chloe were siblings, that his sister was too frail for heavy labor. In the cold of winter at 4 in the morning when the whole village was still fast asleep, only I would wake up before the sun, to go to the fields and do the dirtiest, most strenuous work for Chloe. They had confidently placed the baby by the edge of the field, waiting for me to pass by and, accidentally, find it. In my past life, I had even wondered why I hadn't seen Chloe for months. It turned out she was in her final trimester of pregnancy, hiding somewhere to give birth, afraid of being discovered. Ethan's grip on my shoulder was like an iron clamp, his eyes bloodshot. Tell me, if something happened to the baby, how could you ever repay me? Life or death? I don't understand what you're talking about. His grip was painfully tight, and I struggled to break free. It's so cold. Who would get up this early to go to the fields? You'd freeze to death. Hearing the words freeze to death, Ethan's flushed face instantly turned pale. He no longer had the mind to hide anything and rushed out like a madman. I watched his retreating back and laughed. On the deserted field at dawn, His son had been exposed to the cold wind for several hours. A newborn baby, abandoned in the wilderness by his own father. How pitiful. Ha ha. An auntie walked into the house, shaking a plastic bag in her hand. Kathy, this is the pork the brigade just distributed. Are you still taking it over to Ethan? Ethan's family was influential. He had grown up in good conditions. I had felt sorry for the two siblings, thinking they couldn't handle the rough life in this remote area. Normally, I would save my eggs and cornmeal for Ethan. What's more, pork was something the brigade only distributed once a year. As for me, I only ate sorghum cakes so hard they were difficult to swallow, washing them down with a few gulps of cold water. They were parasites, sucking my blood, and behind my back, they laughed at me for being as stupid as a pig, for actually believing they were siblings. They even wanted to pin their child on me. I clenched my hands so tightly my fingertips turned white. Mrs. Rodriguez, from now on, you don't need to give Ethan Walker anything. She looked surprised. Everyone in the brigade knew I had a crush on Ethan. Even if I only had 1 grain of rice left, I would give it to him. But now, I had suddenly changed. From this day forward, I will keep everything good for myself. That bastard Ethan can get as far away from me as possible. I immediately started a fire, cooked pork stew with vermicelli, and ate it with cornbread, so fragrant I almost bit my own tongue. Indeed, when a woman gets rid of a trashy man, her life will immediately improve. Outside, the sound of neighbors gossiping echoed. Ethan, like a madman, had carried a purple, cold baby to the health clinic, claiming he had found it on the road. How pitiful. The doctor said it was brought in too late. There will definitely be lasting effects. Ethan knelt right there in front of the doctor. Who would have thought that someone normally so cold would be so distraught over a baby that he burst into tears? I let out a cold laugh. How could he not be distraught? That was the first child of him and the woman he loved most. Chloe. It could be because I hadn't eaten anything savory in a long time, or because the pork stew this morning was too greasy. It could also be that thinking of my previous life, of my own biological child being smothered to death by Ethan's own hands, caused a wave of grief to rise up. In the middle of the night, my stomach suddenly cramped violently. I dragged myself to knock on my neighbor Mr. Henderson's door, begging him to take me to the clinic. After getting an injection, the pain subsided. I was about to leave when I happened to see Ethan arguing with a nurse, his face pale. I heard that because he had no money to treat the baby, he wanted the nurse to draw his blood to sell for money. You brought him in too late. For a newborn to be exposed to the cold for that long, he's lucky to be alive. When he grows up, he might have developmental delays and he might not be able to speak. The moment Ethan saw me, his eyes blazed with hatred. He lunged at me and grabbed me by the neck. This is all your fault. If it weren't for you, my son wouldn't have had to suffer like this. Normally you're out in the fields by 4 o'clock. Why didn't you go today? The nurse rushed to pull him off. I clutched my neck, coughing violently. Ethan had really tried to kill me. But wasn't he the one who was wrong? I sneered, my voice sarcastic. What are you talking about? Could it be that you knew beforehand that there was a baby in the field? You're not related to him. Why do you care so much? I had hit a nerve. Ethan pressed his lips together, not saying a word. After a tense moment, he lowered his voice. Kathy, this baby has a pitiful fate. How about you adopt him? He knew very well the child was now disabled, yet he still wanted to saddle me with a lifetime burden. He knew very well that if I, an unmarried woman, took in a child, I would be scorned by the world, yet he didn't care at all. From beginning to end in Ethan's eyes, I was just a tool. A smokescreen to cover up the illicit relationship between him and Chloe. To trick me into raising his child, to drain my youth, my affection, and my money until I was gravely ill and had no more value to be exploited than to be discarded like trash. I squeezed my palms. I will never raise a child who is mentally challenged. And a mute one, even less so. Hearing the words mentally challenged, Ethan's brow furrowed tightly, the veins on his hands popping out. I felt a sense of satisfaction and deliberately added, if it were a normal child, fine. I could raise him and treat him like my own. But this one, no way. Suddenly, a woman, as if possessed, rushed out from behind the curtain. "Cassie Price, watch your mouth. Who are you calling retarded? Who are you calling mute?" It was Chloe. It turned out she had been hiding behind there, eavesdropping the whole time. In the past, I loved Ethan and I also treated his sister like my own family. I did the work of two people. My hands blistered from the hoe. The piece of fabric I had saved for a month to make clothes for myself, I gave to her to make a new shirt. The opportunity to return to the city, the chance to change my life. I gave it all up so she could live a comfortable life. But all my love became a knife in their hands, turning back to stab me without a moment's hesitation. My gaze suddenly fell on the iron box in Chloe Walker's hand, and my heart clenched. That was my father's last memento. No wonder I couldn't find it no matter how much I searched the house. It turned out she had stolen it. I snatched the box. It was empty inside. Where's the pocket watch? Where is my father's watch? Before my hand could even land on her face, Chloe's eyes turned red, and she choked back a sob, hiding behind Ethan Walker. He immediately gave me a hard shove. I sold the watch to pay for medical bills. If you had brought the baby back sooner, he wouldn't have had to be hospitalized for being cold. This is all your fault. Honestly, is a dead person really more important than a living one? I stood there, staring at Ethan, unable to believe my ears. 3 years ago, he had fallen into the river, and it was my own father who had risked his life to save him. But my father, he sank to the bottom of the water, and his body was never found. That pocket watch was the last thing he had left me. Perhaps Ethan also remembered that incident. A faint flicker of guilt appeared in his eyes. "All right, when I make some money later, I'll find a way to redeem it." I gritted my teeth so hard my jaw almost broke. "And what about the photo inside the watch? Did the buyer take my father's picture too?" Chloe suddenly laughed, her eyes full of malice. "A dead person's photo is bad luck. I burned it for the buyer." My vision went black. Rage and hatred surged up like a tidal wave, almost tearing my chest apart. Afraid I would go crazy and hurt Chloe, Ethan immediately dragged me out of the hospital room. He took a deep breath, reined in his anger, and tried to placate me with a show of patience. "Chloe really shouldn't have burned your father's photo. I'll talk to her later." "Okay. You like me, don't you? As long as you agree to raise the baby, I'll consider dating you." Ethan was tall, handsome, well-educated, and came from a prominent background, making him the secret crush of many girls in the brigade. In the early spring, he was the one who proactively taught me how to read, took me up the mountain to catch wild rabbits, and chased away the bullies who picked on me. I was moved and gave him my whole heart. I never expected that. From beginning to end, he was just using me. From early spring to the dead of winter, it was a full 10 months, just enough time for Chloe to get pregnant and give birth. He pretended to be good to me just to trick me into raising his child because he knew very well that I was an orphan with no one to stand up for me. Seeing my silence, Ethan thought I had agreed, his voice revealing a clear sense of smugness. "You're not the one giving birth anyway. What's so bad about suddenly having a son? Go borrow some money to buy a few cans of formula. The baby is crying his lungs out. Don't you feel sorry for him? How ridiculous." He and Chloe were living together under the guise of being siblings. When they had a child, they were afraid of losing face and affecting their future, and they didn't want to go through the hardship of raising it, so they turned around and blamed me, an outsider, for not loving their child. This baby, even its own biological parents didn't want it. What right did I have to run around raising it? I gritted my teeth and said, word by word, but he didn't pay any attention, assuming I was just throwing a tantrum. He even brazenly said that in a few days, I would come back to him like a little dog, wagging my tail and apologizing. It was true. Those who are coddled are always confident, always arrogant. I couldn't be bothered to argue anymore. Let's see. Let him carry his brain-damaged child, and together with Chloe, go searching everywhere for doctors, and suffer for the rest of their lives. I calculated the time. The list of people returning to the city would be announced soon. From now on, no matter where in the world, no one would be able to find me, Kathy Price, again. And no one would be able to order me around like a tool anymore. On the day the list of people returning to the city was announced, I woke up very early and went straight to the notice board. I searched for a long time but couldn't find my name anywhere. In the village, people gathered in small groups whispering, occasionally glancing at me with contempt. The party secretary called me into his office and, using the excuse of improper personal conduct, revoked my slot to return to the city. He told me to go home and reflect, and that the brigade would hold a meeting in a few days to decide on my punishment. It was clear that in this life, I had prepared so carefully to return to the city, yet someone had still pulled a trick. I walked back home like a soulless ghost. Suddenly, a basin of dirty water was thrown straight at me. "You shameless slut! Get out of my house! You're disgusting!" That's right! An unmarried woman, secretly giving birth to a child, and then cruelly abandoning it in the fields. It's a good thing the kind Walker siblings were passing by and found the baby. Otherwise, it would have frozen to death out there. In the countryside, things like this were not uncommon. There were women who, for a few pounds of grain to get out of heavy labor, or to return to the city sooner, would secretly get involved with cadres who had a little power, destroying other people's families. There were also those who were deceived and bullied. But as a woman, who cared about their life or death? If they accidentally got pregnant, they would just wrap a few layers of cloth tightly around their belly and wear loose clothes to hide it. If they couldn't find abortion medicine, their only choice was to give birth and then give the child away, or more cruelly, kill it. Now the way the villagers looked at me was no different from how they looked at those other fallen women. They wanted to tie me up and drag me to the center of the village for a public shaming. I frantically tried to explain, "No, it wasn't me. The baby isn't mine." But they wouldn't believe me, and their scolding only got fiercer. Liar. That night, you begged Mr. Henderson to take you to the hospital, complaining of a stomach ache. It was clearly to see your child. Mr. Henderson couldn't see clearly in the dark, but he heard Kathy arguing with a man about raising a child. "She's always hanging around Ethan Walker. He probably rejected her, so she went and found another man. A slut like her should be thrown in prison. Even if I jumped into the Yellow River, I wouldn't be able to wash myself clean." I stumbled back in fear and fell into a wide embrace. I turned my head and saw the person's face. Every bone in my body felt like it was turning to ice. It was Ethan Walker. He pushed the crying baby into my arms. I believe that Comrade Kathy was deceived by a bad person and went down the wrong path. As long as she repents and raises this child, everyone should forgive her. Ethan pretended to comfort me. "Kathy, I know you've been wronged, but right now, besides raising this baby, you have no other way out." He had deliberately spread the rumor, and then played the hero, coming to my rescue. Step by step, he wanted me to bear the crime of being an unwed mother for Chloe, to have my fate forever tied to the disabled child of those two. "Don't even think about it. I will never let him succeed." My eyes met his. The smug and certain look in Ethan's eyes instantly turned to horror. In his imagination, I was being humiliated by the entire village. With only him stepping forward to help, I should have been grateful to him, moved to tears. But I just stared at him silently, as if I had seen through all his lies and calculations. The auntie from next door stepped forward and took the wailing baby from my arms, gently soothing it. My house was very far away. Other than working together in the fields, I hardly interacted with anyone. Only she was a close acquaintance. Although she was suspicious, there was no proof. Everyone was afraid of bringing trouble upon themselves, so she could only offer a few words of comfort. "It's okay, Kathy. Men are not to be trusted. Now that the baby is born, just raise it well. I'll help you." Right now, a direct confrontation was not a wise choice. These people had been brainwashed by Ethan. They wouldn't believe anything I said. I could only temporarily yield, and then find a way to turn the tables later. I just softly replied, "Yes," and then turned to go back home. In the corner, Chloe, who had been silent all this time, had a look of joy that was almost overflowing. She was clearly sighing in relief. She had finally passed this hot potato of a burden to me. I let out a cold laugh in my heart. Let's see how long you two can be so smug. Back at home, the baby was lying on the earthen bed, crying its heart out. Newborns need a lot of milk, but I had never given birth, and I certainly didn't have the means to buy formula. And even if I had the money, I would never spend it on him. In my previous life, after I found him, Ethan named him Ethan's fortune, meaning that finding this child was the blessing of my life. But it wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I understood. Finding that child was the beginning of a long, inescapable nightmare. Just a few days later, the village started to rumor that I was seducing men and destroying other people's families. There were times when the pain was so intense that I thought about jumping into the river to end it all. At that exact moment, Ethan came to propose. "Kathy, your father once saved my life. I won't let you die like this. Don't be scared. No matter how hard things get in the future, you'll have me by your side. No one will bully you anymore." Later, he tricked me into giving up my slot to return to the city for Chloe. Now that we're husband and wife, we should stay in the countryside and live a good life. Chloe is still young. She should go back to the city to have a better future. I thought, since I had married into the Walker family, Chloe was like my own sister, so I agreed. A year later, Ethan and I had a child. But that night, the baby suddenly and inexplicably died. The nurse said it was because a blanket had covered its nose, causing it to suffocate. What hurt me the most was that, at that very moment, Ethan disappeared without a trace. I carried the abandoned child, traveling everywhere, selling goods to make money while trying to get news of him. But no one knew if he was dead or alive. I resigned myself to my fate and raised that child alone. At first, Ethan's fortune was very obedient and filial to me. He felt sorry for me, working hard day and night to make a living, and even took the initiative to do housework. But when he turned 12, his personality suddenly changed. Occasionally, I would see him with toys and snacks that, given my financial situation, were impossible for him to have. Thinking back now, he had probably already been in secret contact with that scumbag couple, Ethan and Chloe, and they had kept me in the dark, letting me work like a horse to raise their child for them, while they lived a life of ease and pleasure outside. It wasn't until I was exhausted and bedridden, having lost all value to them, that they revealed their true faces. Only when I was bedridden, having lost all value, did Ethan reappear to reveal the truth and force me to divorce him. I was filled with utter resentment. I couldn't be bothered with the wailing baby on the bed and just went about preparing my own dinner. Although I had agreed in front of everyone to adopt the baby in these difficult times, whether I could even raise him was another matter. Adults could barely take care of themselves. Who could worry about what a child was eating? Besides, someone else was surely more anxious than I was. The door was suddenly pushed open forcefully. Ethan walked in, picked up the pitiful baby, and then yelled at me. "Kathy, is this how you're a mother? The boy has cried himself hoarse, and you haven't even glanced at him. Are you trying to let him starve to death?" He saw the pot of pork stew with vermicelli I was still eating, and his anger flared even more. "I never knew you were such a selfish person. Eating like a reincarnated hungry ghost, finishing all the good food by yourself, not thinking of leaving a little for Chloe to recuperate, and not thinking that a small child also needs nutrition. On what grounds do you get to eat so much by yourself?" How ridiculous! I was eating my own food in my own house and I needed his permission? I hadn't even said anything, but he had already naturally assumed I was the baby's mother. "Ethan Walker, where is your shame to say words?" I laughed coldly. "Instead of standing here wasting your breath scolding me, why don't you go find the baby's biological parents? To cruelly abandon him in the middle of winter right after he was born, that's no different from murder. People as heartless as that will sooner or later be struck by lightning. Even in hell, they'll be thrown into a cauldron of boiling oil." I had hit a nerve. Ethan's face turned red with anger, but he couldn't curse back with my own words. He snatched the bowl of sweet potato porridge from my hand and, spoon by spoon, fed it to the baby. But how could a newborn swallow such large grains of rice? After just a few bites, the baby started to choke, his face turning purple. He was almost choked to death by his own biological father. Ethan frantically patted his back, but didn't forget to yell at me. "Are you blind? Get over here and help." I shot him a glare and turned to leave. In my heart, I knew I had more important things to do. "Where are you going?" I didn't give you permission to leave. My legs are on my own body. Who the hell are you to tell me where I can go? He was choked speechless by my words. In the past, I had always been submissive, never speaking to him like this. But from now on, he would have to get used to it. I went to find the auntie from next door. She was well connected in the village and surely knew a lot. I didn't directly reveal the secret of the Walker siblings, just circled around the topic. A few months ago, I didn't see Chloe around at all. Do you know where she might have gone? The auntie thought for a moment and then replied, I think I saw her go to the next village, Little Lou Village. I heard she was visiting some distant relatives or something. I secretly calculated. She must have been hiding there to give birth. As long as I could find the midwife, I could clear my name. I immediately set off for Little Lou Village, bringing with me all the money and food stamps I had saved up, and went to the midwife for help. Unexpectedly, she was an old friend of my father's. After hearing the story, Mrs. Wang's hands trembled with anger. She refused to take my money. That girl looks so innocent, but her heart is so venomous, and she dared to frame you. Your father risked his life to save Ethan, and this is how he repays kindness with malice. No wonder I thought Ethan's treatment of Chloe was too special. They were acting like husband and wife, not siblings. Don't you worry, Kathy. Leave this to me. With Mrs. Wang's promise, I returned to the brigade relieved. As soon as I got home, I saw the door was wide open, and I could hear laughter and talking from a distance. I thought my house had been burglarized. The moment I walked in, I was stunned. The wardrobe was open, clothes thrown all over the floor. The food jars were empty. Even the piece of cured meat I had been saving for the new year, which I hadn't dared to touch, had been taken out. Luckily, before I left, I had hidden my extra food and money well. Ethan's mother was sitting on the earthen bed, shaking a rattle and teasing the baby. Chloe was standing beside her, smiling brightly, looking no different from a happy family. No, they are a family. Ethan's mother glared at me with annoyance. So you're the one who's always dreaming of becoming a daughter-in-law of the Walker family, are you? I don't see you around all day, not serving your mother-in-law, not even looking after your child. Someone like you dares to dream of entering my family's door? Go wash the pot and cook. You're so useless. As expected, like mother, like son, equally thick-skinned. Do they think their family is made of gold that everyone wants to marry into? I grabbed a broom and rushed at them, yelling, "Get out of my house. Is this your house? You dare to barge in and brazenly eat and drink? Pay up!" Ethan, hearing the commotion, rushed in and grabbed my arm, yelling angrily, "Are you crazy, Kathy? You dare to hit my mother? Do you still want to marry me? With a shrewish personality like this, I will definitely not like a woman like you." I twisted my wrist, swung my arm and slapped him straight across the face. Ethan was stunned, holding his cheek, and stammered, You dare hit me? I hit you, so what? Do I need to pick a special day for it?" The noise quickly drew a crowd of villagers. They pointed and whispered nonstop. "Look at that Kathy Price." Ethan was so kind, he brought his mother to help her take care of her child, and she's repaying kindness with malice. That's right. I heard Ethan is the son of a high-ranking official. Yet he doesn't look down on a girl with a tainted reputation like her, and is even so kind to help. I picked up a bowl and threw it outside. Ethan is, of course, anxious about his child. Because that baby is the biological son of him and Chloe. My words were like a drop of water in a hot pan. The entire yard exploded. What nonsense are you talking? Even if you want to frame someone, there should be a limit. How can you pin this on Ethan? They are biological siblings. It's written clearly in the household register, with the red seal of the village secretary. Have you thought about the consequences of what you're saying? Ethan and Chloe had come to the countryside for labor reform together. They had the same last name and were registered in the same household. Who would suspect anything? Even if their actions were a little too intimate, the villagers just thought it was a close sibling relationship. Everyone was furious, thinking I was making things up. Only the two siblings were flustered, their faces pale, as they backed away. "Kathy is not talking nonsense. I can be a witness for her." A middle-aged woman squeezed through. causing the crowd to immediately fall silent. They might doubt the words of others, but Mrs. Wang, the renowned midwife of the village, they could not disbelieve. In this era, medical conditions were still backward. Many women didn't dare to go to the clinic to give birth. Most relied on the village midwife. The midwife's skill was the lifeline for both mother and child. Mrs. Wang's skills were good, so everyone vied for her help. Her words naturally carried weight. A few months ago, a pregnant Chloe came to stay at my house. She even brought a lot of gifts. Ethan also visited often. That pair didn't look like siblings at all. They were more intimate than husband and wife. It was my own hands that delivered her baby. At that time, Chloe Walker hadn't even gotten properly dressed when Ethan Walker rushed into the delivery room. The two of them hugged as if they were the only two people in the world. What kind of siblings are that close? In the past, it was Kathy's father who risked his life to save Ethan Walker from the river. And now he repays kindness with malice, joining that slut to slander his daughter's reputation. And the rest of you, have you all been bought? Can't you tell black from white? Some things just can't stand up to scrutiny. After being exposed by Mrs. Wang, the villagers began to recall small details. In the past, when they were out in the fields or taking a lunch break by the ridges, they would occasionally see the Walker siblings sneaking around in the cornfields. Every time they were caught, they would just say they were harvesting corn. Because it happened so many times, the two of them even gained a reputation for being hardworking and progressive. Moreover, a few months ago, Chloe would occasionally cover her mouth, her face wrinkled as if she were nauseous. Any woman who had given birth knew what that meant. Strange whispers began to spread through the crowd. Ethan's mother, seeing the situation was not good, suddenly sat down on the ground and started wailing. "Oh my God! They're ganging up to bully my family, a poor widow and her orphan. In broad daylight, they're accusing my children of such a filthy crime." Catherine Price, you shameless hussy. You let your illegitimate child prevent you from marrying into the Walker family, and now you want to slander my children? Ethan and Chloe are clearly registered as brother and sister in the household records. Are you daring to say the village secretary took our money to alter the documents? The moment she said that, everyone immediately fell silent. Because it involved the village secretary, a person of power. Everyone was afraid of offending him and didn't dare to make a sound. But I wasn't scared. Then, let's report it to the police. If it's not clear, let the police come and investigate to find the truth. Chloe's face immediately turned deathly pale. She quickly stepped forward and pulled my hand, trying to put on a gentle act. Sister Kathy, let's talk about this slowly. If this gets out, how will you ever get married in the future? If you really don't want to raise the baby, my mother is already here to help you. Help? More like coming to be the Empress Dowager. Eating all my food, wearing my clothes, and still wanting me to serve her tea and water. The Walker family really saw me as an easy-to-bully orphan, clinging to me without shame. In my past life, I toiled away in the countryside, while Chloe lived a life of luxury in the city. After I had raised the child, she would come back to claim him, reaping the rewards without any effort. I pushed her hand away and gave her a resounding slap. Chloe Walker, stop pretending to be noble with me. I haven't even settled the score for your debts yet. You gave birth to an illegitimate child and had the nerve to pin it on me? Aren't you afraid I'll snap its neck? She was stunned, about to open her mouth to retort. I immediately rolled up my sleeves and slapped her left and right, turning her face into a swollen pig's head. The villagers and Ethan rushed to intervene, but I still held onto her hair, refusing to let go. Not until Chloe let out a tragic scream as I ripped out a chunk of her hair. You, Catherine Price, you lunatic! Brother, why are you just standing there watching her hit me? At this moment, Ethan was just cowering in a corner, too timid to step forward. From the moment I mentioned reporting it to the police, he had been like a frozen eggplant, his face pale, not daring to utter a sound. He loved Chloe, but he loved himself more. If this matter were exposed, his future would be over. Even if he made it back to the city, he would have to live with his head down. In the past, he and Chloe were childhood sweethearts. Since they weren't married, they couldn't live together. So they came up with a crooked idea. bribing the village secretary to change their relationship to siblings on the household register. This was a major crime, one that could absolutely land them in prison. He put on a thick-skinned face and approached me. "Kathy, let's talk about this at home. Don't let the neighbors laugh at us. I know you're still angry." With that, he slapped himself across the face. "It's because I've been so worried about the baby lately that I said the wrong thing. I'll change in the future, okay? After all, we're husband and wife. We fight at the beginning of the woods and make up by the end." I sneered and gently pushed his hand away with a light laugh. "You're right. We've caused enough chaos for one day. It's time to put an end to it. Your mother has traveled a long way. It wasn't easy. Let me go to the store to buy some meat to nourish her." Ethan was stunned, not expecting me to be so easy to talk to. Then a hint of contempt appeared in his eyes. He probably thought I had been softened by the words husband and wife, and was still dreaming of marrying him. "Fine, let him dream for a little longer. I will personally shatter that dream." I went straight to the police station, bringing Mrs. Wong with me, and told them the whole story from beginning to end. The police immediately contacted the city to verify the true identities of the Walker siblings. Not long after, the officers came with handcuffs to arrest the village secretary, Ethan Walker, and Chloe Walker. Ethan's mother was behind them, crying and wailing, causing a huge scene. When Ethan saw me, he immediately screamed like a madman, wanting to rush at me to fight. Unfortunately, his hands were cuffed and his shoulders were held down by the police. Ethan struggled frantically, his face scraping against the rough ground until it was bloody. He screamed, "Why? Catherine Price, why? We have no grudge against each other. Why did you have to harm me like this? You said you wouldn't report it to the police. From beginning to end, you were lying to me. You just wait. The first person I'll find when I get out of prison is you." I walked up to him, looking down from above. "Ethan Walker, you still have the face to ask that question? Weren't you the one who was scheming from beginning to end?" "Oh, that's right. I knew from the start that you had deliberately left that baby by the side of the field for me to find. I deliberately ignored it. TSK. A tiny baby like that, being exposed to the cold to the point of neurological damage, he probably won't even be able to live a normal life. A brain-damaged child, without his real parents to take care of him. Can you imagine how he'll be bullied every day? Oh no, whether he can even grow up is a problem." I laughed cheerfully. Ethan went completely mad, muttering nonstop about wanting to kill me. "I've lived through 2 lifetimes. Am I still afraid of these things?" After the truth was revealed, I got my slot to return to the city back. I took all the valuables I had left in the house and gave them to Mrs. Wong. Without her, I could never have turned the tables. Although I had lived a lonely life in my previous life, I had at least experienced the new era of society and knew very well what was most profitable. I bought a train ticket and headed south to Atlanta. There were many wholesale clothing markets there, and the prices were much cheaper than in the north. Every time I imported goods to sell back home, I would make several times the profit. Very quickly, I had saved up my first pot of gold and opened my own fashion boutique. The sound of firecrackers for the grand opening rang out. I gently stroked the fashionable dresses in the shop, overcome with emotion. In my past life, I raised a child alone. I had to split every penny. If my clothes were torn, I would patch them, and then patch them again. The first time I stepped into the city, I looked at myself in a glass window and was so ashamed I just wanted to crawl into a hole and hide. I was even kicked out of a restaurant just for wanting to take my son to a birthday party. Luckily, now I don't have to be envious of anyone anymore. I have countless new clothes to wear. Later, I heard from Mrs. Wang that not long after Chloe was released from prison, she turned against Ethan and ran off with a wealthy merchant. Who knew he was a con man? He sold her to a remote village. She's still chained up there now, forced to give birth to a son. I just smiled faintly and drove away in the new car I had bought. On the road, a thin beggar suddenly blocked the front of my car, begging me for some money and food. Beside him was a dazed child, drool running down his chin, who was kowtowing to me repeatedly. "Please, kind lady, you will be blessed. We haven't had a full meal in days. Please take pity and give us just a few dollars." I was about to take out my wallet when I realized the person was Ethan Walker, and with him was his brain-damaged son. It's true what they say. What goes around comes around. I said coolly. Ethan Walker, stop kowtowing. Even if you kowtow to death here today, it will be useless. Hearing my voice, the beggar froze and looked up at me for a long time. It made sense. Now every time I went out, I would be carefully made up. And my clothes were all as beautiful as a city lady's. When I went back to the village, no one recognized me anymore. He wanted to say something, but I stepped on the gas and sped off. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan, like a madman, running after the car, crying and begging me to stop. Not until his figure had completely disappeared from view. When a person dies, a life is over. But to live on with illness, no money, and no hope, that is the most bitter punishment. But what made Ethan suffer the most was not his current life, but the truth. He once had the chance to live a good life with me in the city. Now, he had become a beggar. That would be a ghost in his heart, haunting him for the rest of his life. I rolled down the car window and held my hand out to feel the cool evening breeze. My mood had never been so light. The story ends here. Thank you for listening and following.